Bianca's breath caught as the ornate Korean vase wobbled on the marble pedestal. Her fingertips grazed the ancient porcelain. Too late. The crash echoed through the Ashworth mansion like a death sentence, shards of blue and white ceramic exploding across pristine floors. Mrs. Victoria Ashworth's voice sliced through the stunned silence, sharp as broken glass. "You stupid, clumsy girl. Do you have any idea what you've just destroyed?" The other staff vanished like smoke, abandoning Bianca to face the storm alone. Her heart hammered against her ribs as the older woman's face contorted with rage, each venomous word a step closer. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Ashworth. It was an accident. I'll pay for it." "Pay for it with what?" The woman's laugh was acidic. "Your pathetic wages? You people can't be trusted with anything of value." Bianca's spine straightened despite the fear clawing at her throat. She wouldn't beg. She wouldn't break. Not for this woman. Not for anyone. Then a sound. The measured click of expensive leather shoes on marble. A voice, deep and cold as winter steel, froze everyone in place. "Is there a problem here?" Bianca's world tilted. Kang Min-Jae stood at the top of the dual staircases like an emperor surveying his domain. His immaculate white suit seemed to glow against the mansion's shadows, custom-tailored to his powerful frame. The collar of his shirt lay open, revealing the dark edge of intricate tattoos that crept up his neck, beautiful and dangerous like him. His presence didn't just fill the room, it commanded it. Even Mrs. Ashworth's arrogance wavered, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly. But what stopped Bianca's heart wasn't his intimidating power. It was his eyes. Those dark, intelligent eyes that swept across the destroyed vase, the trembling maid, the sneering employer, and landed on her with an expression that defied explanation. Recognition. Wonder. Something raw and barely restrained that looked like rage on her behalf. What Bianca didn't know was that this wasn't their first meeting. That 10 years ago, she'd pressed her jacket against his wounds while he lay injured in an alley, whispering promises that he wouldn't die alone. That the most powerful billionaire in New York had spent a decade searching for the girl who chose compassion over safety. That fate had just placed her directly in his path. That the man in white was about to make everyone who'd hurt her beg for the mercy she'd once shown him. If you want to discover how this story began and what happened after this moment, subscribe to the channel and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Each view helps bring more stories like this one. For hours earlier, Bianca had arrived at the Ashworth estate with the same quiet determination that carried her through every impossible day. At 28, she'd perfected the art of invisibility. She worked 3 jobs: cleaning houses before dawn, answering phones at a doctor's office during lunch hours, and doing overnight laundry services on weekends. Every dollar, every cent, went toward one thing: her mother's cancer treatment. Stage 4. Aggressive. The kind that didn't care about payment plans or good intentions. Madame Valeria needed experimental immunotherapy that insurance called non-essential. Bianca called it her mother's only chance at life. The Ashworth mansion rose before her like a monument to everything she'd never have: white columns, manicured gardens, more square footage than her entire neighborhood. She'd taken this job 2 months ago because the pay was double her other cleaning gigs. Now she understood why. Mrs. Victoria Ashworth was impossible to please, and her casual cruelty was an art form. "You people should be grateful for any work we give you," the woman had said just last week, watching Bianca scrub already spotless floors on her hands and knees. Bianca had bitten her tongue, swallowed her pride, and scrubbed harder. Dignity was expensive. Her mother's life was priceless. She'd learned young that survival meant making herself small. Learned it when her father left. Learned it when her mother got sick. Learned it in 1,000 small moments of being overlooked, underestimated, and dismissed. Black girl. Poor girl. Invisible girl. But invisibility was armor. It kept her safe. It kept her employed. It kept her mother alive. By mid-afternoon, Bianca's hands ached and her back screamed, but she moved through the mansion with practiced efficiency. Polish the silver. Dust the artwork. Stay out of sight. That was the rule in houses like this: you could work there, but you could never belong there. She was refilling her cleaning bucket in the service hallway when she heard it. The rumble of expensive engines, multiple cars arriving at once. Voices echoed through the marble foyer. Deep, commanding, speaking in languages she didn't understand. Men who moved like predators. James, the elderly butler, appeared beside her with urgent eyes. "Important business meeting today," he whispered. "Very powerful people. Mrs. Ashworth is hosting. Stay invisible, Bianca. More invisible than usual." She nodded. Invisible was her specialty. But as she worked in the adjacent room, polishing a side table that probably cost more than her yearly salary, she felt it. That electric prickle of being watched. Bianca glanced up through the archway into the grand foyer, and her breath simply stopped. Among the cluster of men in expensive suits stood someone who made the air itself seem different. Younger than the others, maybe early 30s, with dark hair and features that marked him as Korean. His white suit was immaculate, cut to perfection, the kind of clothing that whispered wealth in a voice that didn't need to shout. But it was his presence that truly arrested her. The way he stood perfectly still while everyone else moved around him, like he was the sun and they were merely planets caught in orbit. Then he turned. His eyes found hers across 20 feet of marble and crystal chandeliers. Time fractured. His expression shifted through shock recognition, something that looked almost like pain, before settling into an intensity that made her skin flush hot and cold simultaneously. He stared at her like she was a ghost, like she was a miracle, like he'd been searching for her his entire life. Impossible. She'd never seen this man before in her life. Yet something in those dark eyes whispered otherwise. Something about the way he looked at her, like she mattered, like she was seen, made her heart remember something her mind had forgotten. "Kang, you coming?" Another man called, breaking whatever spell had descended. The man in white, Kang, tore his gaze away with visible effort, jaw clenching like it physically hurt him to stop looking at her. He disappeared into Mrs. Ashworth's private meeting room, leaving Bianca breathless and confused and terrifyingly certain that everything was about to change. She pressed a hand to her racing heart, told herself she'd imagined it, told herself to focus on work, told herself that men like that didn't look at women like her. Not really, not with anything except the kind of attention that hurt. But her hands trembled as she polished the table. And when she closed her eyes, she could still feel the weight of his stare. For hours later, her world would shatter as completely as the vase. For hours later, she would learn that some debts take a decade to repay. For hours later, she would discover that the most dangerous man in New York remembered exactly who she was. And that he'd spent 10 years making sure that when he found her again, no one would ever make her feel small again. Bianca's alarm screamed at 4:30 a.m., the same cruel sound that had started every day for the past 2 years. She silenced it before the second ring. Habit born from not wanting to wake neighbors in her paper-thin apartment walls. Her body protested as she rose, muscles aching from yesterday's work, and the day before that, and the 100 days before that. The routine was mechanical now. Shower in 4 minutes to save on the water bill. Instant coffee, no sugar, luxuries were for people who could afford them. 2 slices of toast that would have to last until her lunch break at 2 p.m. Check her phone for the text she dreaded. Mom's pain worse. Might need to go to the ER. Today, Mercy. No text. She caught the 5:15 a.m. bus to the Riverside district, where houses cost more than she'd earn in 3 lifetimes. The 20-minute ride was her only peace. Eyes closed, body swaying with the motion, pretending for just a moment that she didn't carry the weight of the world on her shoulders. Last night's hospital visit haunted her. Madame Valeria had looked smaller somehow, her rich brown skin ashen against white sheets. The oncologist's words still echoed. The cancer's spreading. There's an experimental immunotherapy, but insurance considers it non-essential. Out-of-pocket cost is $180,000. Non-essential. As if her mother's life could be measured in actuarial tables. Bianca worked 3 jobs. Still not enough. Would never be enough. The Ashworth estate materialized through morning mist like a palace from another world. White columns, sprawling gardens, windows that gleamed like judging eyes. She entered through the service entrance, as invisible as the wallpaper, and found Mrs. Victoria Ashworth already prowling the halls in emerald silk. "You're late," the woman said, though Bianca was 5 minutes early. "I apologize, ma'am." Mrs. Ashworth's gaze raked over Bianca's worn uniform with barely concealed disgust. "You people should be grateful for any work we give you. Try to remember that today. We have very important guests coming." The words landed like slaps, but Bianca's face remained serene. She'd learned long ago that dignity meant swallowing poison and calling it water. She simply nodded, gathered her supplies, and began the day's work. By noon, her hands were raw from chemicals, her knees bruised from scrubbing. Other staff whispered in corners. James, the butler, caught her eye with urgent warning. Big meeting today. Powerful people. Stay invisible. Invisible. Her specialty. She was polishing an antique side table in the gallery when she heard them, the predatory purr of expensive engines. Through the tall windows, sleek black cars rolled up the circular drive like a motorcade. Men emerged in tailored suits, moving with the confidence of those who'd never known doubt. But one man made her breath catch. White suit, dark hair, presence like gravity itself. And when he turned toward the mansion, his eyes found hers through the glass, and the world stopped spinning. They entered like conquerors, 6 men whose combined wealth could purchase small nations. Korean, Japanese, American moguls, each radiating the particular arrogance of those born to power. But they moved like satellites around a sun, and that sun wore white. Kang Min-Jae. The name rippled through the staff in whispered reverence. Billionaire. Tech empire. Underworld connections that no one dared speak about above a murmur. He moved through the foyer with the lazy grace of a predator who'd never known fear, and the entire mansion seemed to hold its breath. Staff straightened instinctively. James's spine went rigid. Even Mrs. Ashworth's voice transformed, dripping with honey as she greeted them. Mr. Kang, such an honor. Please, this way to the conservatory. Bianca pressed herself against the wall, cloth in hand, trying to become part of the furniture. Invisible. Safe. But his eyes found her anyway. Across 30 feet of marble and crystal chandeliers, Kang Min-Jae's gaze locked onto hers like a missile finding its target. The world contracted to just this, his dark eyes widening with something between shock and wonder, his body going perfectly still while chaos moved around him. Recognition blazed in his expression. But how? She'd never seen this man before in her. Wait. A flash of memory, sudden and visceral. 10 years ago. An alley between buildings. A boy lying on concrete. A boy's face, younger, terrified, Korean features twisted in pain. His eyes, those same dark eyes, staring up at her as she pressed her jacket against him. His voice broken. Don't leave me. Please don't leave me. Her own voice, steady despite fear. I'm not going anywhere. You're not alone. The memory fractured as quickly as it came. Min-Jae's jaw clenched, emotion rippling across his features. Too raw, too exposed for a man of his power. His hand moved toward her, an unconscious gesture before. Kang, we should begin. His associate's voice shattered the moment. The Seoul office is waiting on the call. Min-Jae tore his gaze away with visible effort, like breaking a physical bond. His jaw worked silently, and Bianca saw his hands clench into fists before he forced them to relax. The business meeting began in the conservatory, but Bianca couldn't focus. She moved through her tasks mechanically, polishing silver that didn't need polishing, but she felt his attention like heat on her skin. Every time she glanced toward the conservatory doors, his eyes were there, watching her through the glass with an intensity that made her hands tremble. You there? Mrs. Ashworth's voice cracked like a whip. What do you think you're doing, lurking about where our guests can see you? You're disturbing them. Get to the east wing. Now! Bianca's spine straightened. Yes, ma'am. She gathered her supplies, turned toward the service hallway. Each step felt like walking through water, her body knowing something her mind couldn't grasp. Then, a voice that stopped her heart. Wait! Deep. Commanding. Desperate. She turned. Min-Jae stood in the conservatory doorway, his associates forgotten, his eyes locked on her with naked need. But Mrs. Ashworth moved between them like a wall. Mr. Kang, please, the contract requires your attention. This way. Her hand on his arm, redirecting, dismissing. Min-Jae's eyes held Bianca's for one more second, a promise, a plea, before he disappeared into the meeting, leaving her standing in the hallway, her heart hammering, and the distinct feeling that her carefully controlled world was about to detonate. 3 hours crawled by like years. The business meeting dragged on behind closed doors, voices rising and falling in languages Bianca didn't understand, punctuated by laughter that sounded like money changing hands. She worked in the east wing as ordered, but her mind remained trapped in that moment. His eyes. That recognition. The impossible memory of alleyways. Finally, the conservatory doors opened. Men emerged, shaking hands, speaking in satisfied tones. The meeting had gone well. Deals were struck. Empires expanded. Bianca seized her chance to cross back through the main hall, arms loaded with fresh linens. If she was quick, if she was invisible enough, she could. "You there?" Mrs. Ashworth's voice cracked through the foyer like a whip. "What do you think you're doing in the main hall? I specifically told you to stay in the east wing." Bianca startled, spinning toward the woman's fury. Her hip clipped the corner of the antique side table. The world became slow motion. The Korean vase, blue and white porcelain, centuries old, positioned on the table like a crown jewel, wobbled. Bianca's hands shot out, linens tumbling to the floor, fingers grasping at air. For one terrible heartbeat, she thought she might catch it. She didn't. The vase tipped, rolled, and exploded across the marble floor in a catastrophe of shattered ceramic. Each piece seemed to scream as it broke, ancient history destroyed in seconds. Silence descended like a guillotine blade. Mrs. Ashworth's face contorted into something grotesque, rage and triumph twisted together. "You stupid clumsy!" Her voice climbed to a shriek. "Do you have any idea what that was worth? That was a family heirloom. Priceless. On loan from Mr. Kang's personal collection." The words hit like physical blows. Bianca's throat closed. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Ashworth. It was an accident. I'll pay. Pay!" The woman's laughter was vicious. "Pay for it with what? Your pathetic wages? You couldn't afford to look at that vase, much less replace it." She stepped closer, voice dropping to poison. "You people can't be trusted with anything of value. You're careless. Destructive. This is exactly why." The racist venom continued, each word designed to cut deeper. Staff members who'd been watching scattered like roaches when lights turned on, abandoning Bianca to her execution. "I'm calling the police," Mrs. Ashworth announced, pulling out her phone. "Destruction of property. You'll be arrested. Sued. I'll make sure you never work in another decent household in this city. You'll be blacklisted from every." Panic clawed up Bianca's throat. Arrested. Sued. Blacklisted. Her mother's treatment. The experimental therapy. The $180,000 she'd been desperately saving toward. Gone. All of it gone. But she kept her spine straight, chin up, refusing to give this woman the satisfaction of seeing her break. Then a sound. The measured click of expensive leather shoes on marble. Slow. Deliberate. Lethal. Every eye turned to the dual staircases. Kang Min-Jae descended like a white-suited angel of retribution, his expression carved from ice and fury. The tattoos on his neck seemed darker against his pale skin. His eyes locked on the scene below, the shattered vase, the trembling maid, the sneering employer, and something in them promised consequences. When he spoke, his voice was silk wrapped around steel. "Is there a problem here?" The temperature in the foyer dropped 10 degrees. Mrs. Ashworth's righteous fury wavered as she registered who stood before her. Not just another wealthy guest, but the man whose displeasure could ruin lives with a phone call. "Mr. Kang." She smoothed her dress with trembling hands. "This clumsy girl destroyed your family's heirloom. A priceless vase from the Joseon dynasty. I was just about to call the authorities. What's your name?" Min-Jae's voice cut through Mrs. Ashworth's explanation like it didn't exist. His eyes remained locked on Bianca, unwavering, intense enough to burn. Bianca's throat was desert dry. "Bianca, sir." Something cracked in his expression, pain flashing across his features like lightning, followed by recognition so raw it hurt to witness. His jaw worked silently, and for a moment he looked like a man seeing a ghost. Not the frightening kind. The kind you'd spent your whole life praying would return. "Bianca," he repeated, tasting the name like a prayer he'd forgotten. Then his gaze shifted to Mrs. Ashworth, and the warmth iced over instantly. "How much was the vase worth?" $75,000. "Irreplaceable, a family treasure that." "Then I'll have an identical one delivered tomorrow morning." Min-Jae pulled out his phone, spoke rapid Korean in a voice that brokered no argument. Someone on the other end scrambled to obey. He ended the call with clinical precision. Resolved. "My assistant will handle the details." Mrs. Ashworth's mouth opened and closed like a gasping fish. "That's generous, Mr. Kang, but the girl still needs to learn responsibility. She needs to face consequences for her carelessness." Miss Bianca no longer works for you. Each word fell like a judge's gavel. The world tilted sideways. Bianca's vision blurred at the edges. What? Min-Jae turned to her fully, and the intensity in his eyes stole whatever breath she had left. He extended his hand, not a command but an invitation. An offering. You're coming with me. I don't understand. You don't have to. Not yet. His voice softened, meant only for her. But you will. Mr. Kang, you can't just, Mrs. Ashworth sputtered, face reddening. She destroyed property. She needs to be held accountable. You can't simply walk in here and… Min-Jae's gaze shifted to her, and Mrs. Ashworth's words died in her throat. His expression didn't change. No anger, no threat, just absolute certainty of power. I suggest you reconsider who you're speaking to, Mrs. Ashworth. His voice dropped to lethal calm, the kind that preceded avalanches. Your husband's commercial real estate portfolio? It depends entirely on financing from my investment group. The Mitchell Tower deal closes next month. He paused, let that sink in. Treat your staff better. All of them. Or discover exactly how quickly my patience ends and how expensive my displeasure becomes. Mrs. Ashworth went pale, then gray. Her lips moved soundlessly. Min-Jae turned back to Bianca, hand still extended, eyes holding a question and a promise. You don't have to come. But if you do, I swear on everything I am, no one will ever make you feel small again. Behind him, his associates waited by the door. The mansion held its breath. And Bianca, staring at this impossible man who somehow knew her name before she spoke it, who looked at her like she was precious, who just threatened a woman's entire livelihood to defend her dignity. She placed her trembling hand in his. The Mercedes was a fortress on wheels, black leather, tinted windows, silence so complete Bianca could hear her own heartbeat. She sat in the back seat, Min-Jae beside her, close enough that she felt the heat radiating from him. 2 bodyguards occupied the front, silent as statues, eyes forward. Manhattan blurred past the windows. But Bianca couldn't focus on anything except the man beside her and the impossible question burning in her throat. Why are you doing this? Her voice cracked. You don't know me. Min-Jae turned to her, and his laugh was broken glass, painful, sharp with old wounds. Don't I? Bianca's breath caught. 10 years ago, he began, voice low and measured. I was 18. Korean exchange student at NYU, studying business, trying to prove myself worthy of my family's name. His jaw clenched. One night, walking home from the library, 3 men decided I didn't belong in their neighborhood. The air thickened. They used words I won't repeat. Called me things that made it clear. I wasn't human to them. Just a target. His hands fisted on his knees. They beat me until I couldn't stand. Until I couldn't see. Until I could barely breathe, and I knew this was how I'd die. Alone in an alley between buildings where no one would find me until morning. Bianca's chest constricted. Then she appeared. Min-Jae's voice gentled, reverent. A young black woman, 18 years old, on her way home from work. She should have walked past. Should have saved herself. Instead, she knelt beside me and helped. The memory crashed over Bianca like a wave, vivid, visceral, undeniable. The boy's terrified face. Korean phrases she couldn't understand. His hand gripping hers with desperate strength. She pressed her jacket against me. Min-Jae continued. Called an ambulance. Stayed with me, talking, keeping me conscious. His eyes found hers, shimmering. She said, You're not alone. I won't let you die here. You. Bianca's whisper barely existed. That was you. Min-Jae nodded, throat working. When the paramedics arrived, you disappeared before I could thank you. Before I could ask your name. I had nothing, just the memory of your face, your voice, your kindness when I had no reason to expect any. He pulled out a leather folder from the seat pocket. Inside, private investigator reports, dozens of them. Sketches of her face from his memory. Maps of the Bronx marked with search patterns. Every lead followed, every dead end documented. I've spent 10 years searching, Min-Jae said roughly. Built an empire on one principle, becoming powerful enough to find the woman who saved my life. Wealthy enough to repay the debt to someone who chose compassion over safety. Bianca stared at the evidence of his obsession, tears blurring her vision. 10 years. He'd searched for 10 years. I built everything I have, he continued, voice breaking, trying to become someone worthy of the mercy you showed me. The Mercedes turned onto the West Side Highway, city lights painting his face in shifting shadows. "Where are we going?" Bianca asked. Min-Jae's eyes held hers with an intensity that felt like a vow. "To your new life." The building pierced the Manhattan skyline like a blade, glass and steel, the kind of address that appeared in architectural magazines. The penthouse elevator required a key card. When the doors opened, Bianca stepped into a space that stole her breath. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city like a painting. Modern furniture in clean lines shared space with traditional Korean elements. A celadone vase on the mantel, ink paintings on the walls, the subtle fusion of two worlds coexisting. "This is yours," Min-Jae said quietly. "If you want it. 3 bedrooms, one for you, one for your mother when she's ready, one for whatever you need." Bianca's walls slammed up. "I can't accept charity." "It's not charity." His voice was steel-wrapped in silk. "It's a debt repaid. You don't understand." "I know everything, Bianca." Min-Jae's eyes held hers. "Your mother, Madame Valeria. Stage 4 cancer. Insurance denied the experimental immunotherapy. Memorial Sloan Kettering has a treatment that could save her life, but it costs $180,000 you don't have." Her breath stopped. "How?" "I've arranged for Dr. Chun, the best oncologist in the country. Your mother starts treatment Monday." Bianca's knees buckled. "Why?" The word tore from her throat. "Why give me all this?" Min-Jae stepped closer, and she saw his control fracturing. "Because when I was injured in that alley, I prayed to every god I knew, Korean, Christian, anyone who'd listen. And you appeared." His voice broke. "You weren't sent to save me. You chose to. You chose compassion when you had every reason to walk past another problem that wasn't yours." He reached toward her face, stopped just short of touching. "You showed me humanity exists. Let me show you what that humanity built." Bianca's phone shattered the moment, her mother's ringtone. She answered with shaking hands. "Baby." Valeria's voice was tears and terror. "The doctor called. The cancer's spread to my liver. They said if I don't start treatment immediately, I have weeks. Maybe less." The world tilted. Bianca's vision went white at the edges. Min-Jae caught her before she hit the floor, his arms strong and sure. "Say yes," he whispered against her hair. "Let me help. Please." Through tears that wouldn't stop, Bianca heard herself speak words that would change everything. "Okay. Yes." The Mercedes convoy moved through Manhattan like a presidential motorcade. Within 2 hours, Madame Valeria sat in Memorial Sloan Kettering's premier suite, Dr. Chun reviewing scans with the urgency Min-Jae's money commanded. "Bianca, what's happening?" Valeria's voice trembled. "Who is this man?" Bianca knelt beside her mother's bed, taking fragile hands in hers. She explained everything. The alley 10 years ago, the injured boy, the decade-long search, the debt he'd sworn to repay. Valeria's eyes hardened. "Baby, men like him don't give without taking." The words hung heavy with history. Generations of distrust, of wealth that crushed rather than lifted, of power that extracted rather than protected. Black woman. Korean man. Different worlds, different wounds. Min-Jae approached with careful humility, speaking in accented English. "Madame Valeria, I understand fear. I understand not trusting." His voice carried weight. "But I give you my word, Korean word, honor word, I protect Bianca with my life. Why should I believe you?" Valeria's gaze was steel. Min-Jae's eyes shimmered. "Because 10 years ago, your daughter saw me as human when 3 men saw me as enemy. She chose kindness when hatred surrounded me." His voice cracked. "I choose to honor that forever." Treatment began that night. Valeria was too weak to fight. Weeks bled together. Bianca stayed at the hospital, sleeping in chairs, holding her mother's hand through chemotherapy storms. Min-Jae handled everything else. Bills that never arrived, staff that appeared when needed, logistics that solved themselves. Late one night, he brought food. Not hospital cafeteria offerings, but Korean comfort food in ceramic bowls. "Juk," he said, setting down rice porridge. "Good for healing." "Juk," Bianca repeated, mangling the pronunciation. He smiled, the first real one she'd seen. "Close." "Juk." "Teach me," she said. So he did. Korean phrases traded for stories of Valeria's strength, how she'd raised Bianca alone after her father left, how she'd worked 3 jobs so her daughter could dream beyond their neighborhood. "She sounds like you," Min-Jae said softly, their hands almost touching across the table. She taught me everything worth knowing. The moment stretched, intimate and fragile. Min-Jae's phone erupted. His expression shifted instantly, all business. I have to go. Business matter that can't wait. Is everything okay? His jaw clenched. My rival is making moves. I'll handle it. He left, and Bianca felt the sudden absence like cold wind. Outside, Min-Jae's voice carried back, speaking rapid Korean, each word sharp and decisive. The war for her safety had just begun. Min-Jae returned at 3 a.m., and Bianca knew immediately something was wrong. He moved through the penthouse door with controlled precision, but his white shirt was no longer pristine. Dark stains marked the fabric. His jacket was gone. His tie hung loose. And for the first time since she'd met him, he looked human, exhausted, vulnerable. You should be at the hospital, he said, voice rougher than usual. Mama's sleeping. The nurses insisted I rest. Bianca stood from the couch, heart hammering. What happened? Business. The word was a wall. Business that leaves you looking like you've been in a fight. Min-Jae's jaw clenched. He moved toward the bedroom, dismissing the conversation, but Bianca followed. Let me see. Bianca, please. Something in her voice made him stop. Turn. His eyes held hers for a long moment before his hands moved to his shirt buttons, fingers working slowly. The white fabric parted, revealing what he'd hidden beneath the immaculate suits. Bianca's breath caught. Scars. Old ones, silvered with time, mapping his torso like a violent history book. The hate crime that nearly killed him, written permanently on his skin. But beneath those ancient wounds were fresh ones. Bruises blooming purple and black across his ribs. A gash along his collarbone recently stitched. Knuckles bruised and swollen. Your rival, Bianca whispered, understanding flooding through her. Tried to send a message. Min-Jae's voice was flat. I sent one back. He won't threaten you again. She stepped closer, hand reaching toward the worst bruise before stopping. You're hurt. I'm fine. You're fighting to keep me safe. The words hung between them, truth and accusation combined. Min-Jae's control cracked, emotion flooding his features. Pain, devotion, fear he'd been hiding behind perfectly tailored armor. I would sacrifice everything, he said roughly, if it meant you never felt afraid again. Bianca's hand finally touched his skin, fingers gentle against the bruise over his heart. You don't have to carry this alone. I do. That's what protection means. No. Her eyes met his. It means we carry it together. Min-Jae's hand covered hers, pressing her palm against his scarred chest where his heart hammered beneath. You saved me once, he whispered. Let me save you now, even if it costs everything. Outside, dawn broke over Manhattan. Inside, something deeper than debt was being forged. The penthouse terrace overlooked Manhattan at dusk, the city painting itself in gold and shadow. Bianca stood at the railing, champagne flute forgotten in her hand, watching the skyline. 18 months had rewritten her entire world. Behind her, Min-Jae's footsteps were quiet on stone. She felt him before he touched her. That electric awareness that had never faded only deepened. Your mother called, he said, arms sliding around her waist. She wanted you to know the latest scans are perfect. Complete remission. Bianca's eyes closed, gratitude threatening to overwhelm her. I still can't believe it sometimes. That she's healthy. That we're here. Believe it. Min-Jae's lips brushed her temple. You're allowed to stop bracing for disaster, you know? She turned in his arms, studying the man who'd transformed his entire empire for her. The past 18 months had cost him. Legitimizing his business meant divesting from lucrative operations, turning evidence on former associates, rebuilding from cleaner foundations. He'd sacrificed power, connections, vast sums of money. Do you ever regret it? Bianca asked quietly. Everything you gave up? Min-Jae's laugh was soft. Gave up. His hand cupped her face. I gave up shadows for daylight. Tainted money for clean wealth. Fear for peace. His eyes held hers. I gave up nothing that mattered and gained everything I needed. Your business is stronger now. More legitimate, more sustainable. His thumb traced her cheekbone. But that's not what I'm talking about. The intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. 18 months ago, I thought finding you would close a chapter, Min-Jae said. Repay a debt, ensure your safety, walk away knowing I'd honored what you gave me. His voice roughened. I was a fool. Min-Jae. I fell in love with you, Bianca. Not the memory of a girl who saved me, but the woman standing in front of me. Your strength. Your compassion. The way you see through every defense I've ever built and choose to stay anyway. Tears blurred her vision. I love you too. So much it terrifies me sometimes. Then be terrified with me. Min-Jae pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, and the world narrowed to just this moment. Build a life with me. Not one built on debt or obligation, but on choice. On choosing each other every single day. The ring inside was breathtaking. A single diamond catching the last rays of sunlight, elegant in its simplicity. Marry me, he said simply. Not because fate brought us together, but because I can't imagine my future without you in it. Bianca's hands trembled as she framed his face. Yes. God, yes. His kiss tasted of promise and joy, and the future spreading infinite before them. When they broke apart, Manhattan glittered below. Witness to their beginning, monument to what they'd built. I love you, Min-Jae whispered against her lips. My savior. My partner. My home. I love you, Bianca answered. Always. Behind them, the penthouse waited, their sanctuary, their empire, their new beginning. Before them stretched everything they'd choose together, built not on shadows or debt, but on the simplest, strongest foundation. Pure, honest, chosen love. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes in second chances and the power of kindness. Drop a comment below telling us what you loved most about Bianca and Min-Jae's journey. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to life.